How is it going, everybody? My name is All Fun and Games, and I've been streaming and playing Don't Starve Together for a very long time. Recently, I've kind of stepped back pretty heavily. A lot of that is just because of just a lot of changes in my personal life, but also just, a few things here and there. I kind of wanted to give a little bit of an update, as a lot of people have been asking, will you be streaming more Don't Starve Together in the future? Will you be doing more YouTube videos for DST? Now, keep in mind, for you, Don't Starve Together YouTube, I will always be providing as many updates as I can to inform everybody about any free points available, any free skins, any new updates. I don't generally dive too deep into what those updates look like. So, for example, if for some odd reason you're wondering like what's going on, you're like, hey, I'm waiting to find out if, for example, there's a change log or whatever that might be for a specific update. I mean, that obviously depends on, what it is and how big of it is for me to actually supply content for it. So what I'm saying is that, of course, doing an update or a small trailer reveal or something like that, the trailers, I always encourage everybody to go out in there and watch them themselves so they can kind of get a sneak peek into the full video and the cinematics and everything themselves. But when it comes to game content, I always encourage people to experience that too. So that being said, you're not really going to get a video out of me that's like explaining attack differences from a previous update to this update, something like that. But however, I'll always try to do my best to supply content to with any new updates that I know of or upcoming information, things like that. Now, so as it comes for Don't Starve Together streaming, I do plan to stream periodically. Right now, things are a little bit busy for me, so I'm not actually able to really get out there and do a lot of Twitch streaming for Don't Starve Together. I would love to go back. Question mark, right? This is the big question mark. Example, like the title. Where is Don't Starve Together headed? So when I started playing DST, it became one of those games that were very challenging, as it probably was for a lot of you out there. You kind of come to the game and you realize, okay, this game is a lot harder than a lot of other games I've played, which is funny because most people outside looking in look at a game like DST and they say, yeah, I don't know about this game. It seems pretty, sometimes people call it childish. I mean, because obviously the animation might not be something similar that you're used to. But let's be honest, when you finally play Don't Starve Together, you realize how unforgiving this game really can be. And as a person starting out playing this game, it becomes a large learning curve. And that's the most fun about DST is the learning curve, right? When you first start get the game, you realize, oh my gosh, this game really wants to just try to see you fail. And the more you survive and the longer you survive, the more you become accustomed to it and love every moment of it. So that brings us to the question of where is Don't Starve Together headed? Now, obviously, I don't have the answers, in hand where I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly where it's headed. But I think they might be on the right track. Now, when I first started playing DST, of course, the learning curve happened. I got used to the game, streamed it a ton, played it a ton. I have over I don't know if it's 10,000 hours. I don't know how many hours I have on Steam for this game. Might be over 7,000 hours. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, it's a lot of hours. Let's put it that way. Over time, you essentially continue to play a game to the point where you almost kind of, not that you've had enough of it, but you're always looking for the next thing. There's been lots of updates that's happened to Don't Starve Together, don't get me wrong, but I think right now that we're almost in this lull period before something major happens, or at least I hope so anyways. I definitely have stepped away from it pretty big. I've noticed that a lot of cool updates have came out, but I haven't really seen anything that really catches my eye too much. Now, when I first started playing DST, there's lots of new bosses to get used to, lots of new ways of survival, lots of ways of trying to survive, and then of course became mods. Mods obviously help you enjoy the game a little bit more. Sometimes people think that playing the game with mods is not a good idea, and some people I think that playing the game on endless instead of survival is also not the real way of playing the game. But in the end, play Don't Starve Together the way you want to play it. Don't ever let anybody tell you otherwise, because in the end, it's your game. If you want to play it with one person, 2,900 people, or with 7,500 mods, that's entirely up to you. Now, the game is still enjoyable, don't get me wrong, but of course the idea of survival and trying to figure out what that looks like doesn't really play the same role as it did before. You get used to certain characters and how certain characters play, realizing certain recipes are a lot easier than they used to be, and so on, increasing your survivability rate a little bit higher. Now, there's a lot of late game stuff that gets added into Don't Starve Together, and as of recently, we've seen that happen. For example, lots of updates, the Depths of Duplicity, the one that just showed right here, adding lots of cave stuff, which is really awesome. There's a lots of lunar activity with a ton of moon stuff happening, and tons of shadow things and shadow essence and new clay skill tree, or sorry, Don't Starve Together skill trees gets implemented, things like that. These are all awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, they're not anything to shake a stick at, because it does add more content and consistency into DST, and of course makes the game a little bit bigger in the end for a lot of late game stuff. The thing is, I think Don't Starve Together is really missing right now is a lot of, not necessarily filler, but a way of people to be able to play the game who have already been playing the game a ton and experience almost a different variation of the game. Randomization with calculated risk added into survivability and all that other stuff really plays a huge factor in gameplay. That's a reason why a lot of players enjoy playing games like 7 Days to Die and a lot of more survival games such as that a lot of people enjoyed a lot of randomization and not knowing where their things were last. Basically, first person gives you that visual aspect that makes you look and say, I have no idea where I am. The thing with Don't Starve Together, though, is with the way the map layout is when you are actually looking at it, you can pretty much see where you are at all the time. Because, of course, by the time you show off the map, you're able to see exactly where you were 10 minutes ago as the fog of war disappears. Whereas if you're in first person mode, it's a little bit harder to keep track of where you are. So, of course, this is not like for everybody. Some people view the map and say the map is huge and it's very hard to keep track of where I am half the time. But in reality, the map is not that large, kind of similar to how it is in Terraria. What I'm getting at is this. If there was a lot more randomization, of course, when you randomize your map, you regenerate it, things in different biomes go everywhere. That's fine. That's okay. But the problem is with Don't Starve Together as is, where all different animals are going to lie. You know where most of the bosses are going to sit, and you know where pretty much everything in the game is going to be every single time the map regenerates. If this were to change, or if some sort of variable were to be added where Don't Starve Together all of a sudden became a lot more random and a lot less, kind of checklist, meaning I survived through the beginning of autumn, I survived through summer, and then I survived through so on and so on. Sorry, autumn, and then of course winter, and then spring, and then summer. I should say. Sorry, not know why I said it backwards. Then you go through the points of the actual way of seasons, and then of course you're able to show yourself that, hey, I made it through an entire year in DST. What's next? When you do this over and over and over again, you get so used to doing this that everything else becomes repetition at the same time too. And this is not a bad thing. This is not one of those things where I'm complaining about Don't Starve Together. I'm just saying that I think that we need to see a little bit more randomization. As of right now, with all the content that we're receiving, it's amazing. I love seeing it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not questioning any of it or saying that it's bad in any way or late game stuff is not needed, because there's a lot of fillers that need to be added into DST to really make the game for what it is. With all the new content regarding all the new skill trees and everything, of course, that's another question mark added. What are the skill trees really there for? Is it to be adding more uses for players? Is it to be adding more kind of like a little type of revamp for each character? And what does that look like going forward? Does that mean once we get the skill trees and they're perfected, that we'll no longer receive any character updates or changes along the way? Will that put a big period on each character saying, hey, you know what, they've been perfected as much as they can be, small little tweaks after this? Because we've seen lots of tweaks happen to different characters periodically. So what does this really mean? Why are the skill trees being done? Is it just for the fact of having a skill tree, or is there more to be said? Okay, I think Don't Starve Together is going in the right direction. Do I know what's to be expected from DST? I have no idea. Do I think we're going to get some sort of massive update or expansion? I really think we could really see it happening. And the only reason why I'm saying this is because one or two things could really happen. When a game becomes obviously to a point where lots of people have played it, but Clay might look at it and say, listen, in order for us to amplify our current major game, we have two options. We either keep working on the game that obviously is, there for us, that's been there for us, and we leave it as is and we change it accordingly. Or we could make a new version or a newer game or some sort of major overhauled version of that still implements all of the content that is from the previous one. essentially kind of giving you that version of imagine Counter-Strike, and now all of a sudden now you go to the source engine, basically matching the content and giving you everything that you have, but giving you a better overhaul of the game. Maybe it looks better, maybe the graphics look different, maybe all that stuff is just, a little bit better, but inside of a different game. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? No. Do I think they need to update the graphics and Don't Starve Together? No. I think everybody likes the art style of DST. But do I think that they could potentially do something like that to make the game bigger and better down the road? Sure. We all know that Don't Starve Together is a little bit outdated when it comes to, the way that it was built on, and like all that other stuff and all the technical mumbo jumbo that comes with the game. Sure. So what I think is that the game could lead us down to a point where basically Clay says, look, we are either going to have two choices of releasing an expansion, which may add a lot more players back into the game, or we release a new game, aka just Don't Starve Together 2, or Don't Starve Together Revamped, or Don't Starve Together, whatever they decide to call it, that brings back all the previous players, realizing that it's all on a new platform or whatever that might be. Not platform, engine, basically like what they build Don't Starve Together on. For example, if like right now DST is built on a 32-bit architecture, it'll be on a 64-bit architecture or whatever that might be, to add more areas for them to code more awesome stuff into the game, for the game to support, just basically make it easier for them to code on and make it look nice and just make it run a lot better. Not that it's running bad right now, but I'm sure there's a lot of flaws behind the scenes to work on a game that was built on, a little bit of an older technology when it first came out. So there's things like that to consider. So if they decide to do that, do I think that that would bring in a big influx to gamers that are willing to play DST again? I think so. Would I buy Don't Starve Together 2 or whatever that might look like? Sorry. Yes. Do I think that Clay would be so kind to give us that sort of game release worldwide and say, hey, you know what, everybody that owns Don't Starve Together gets this big update for free? Probably. I really don't think that they're the type of company that would ask you to pay for it. Now, even if they did, I would still pay for it, because it would really bring me back and say, hey, you know what, we got the old game meets the new game plus new content added onto it, plus it makes it easier for them to program stuff into the game and add new things into the game. I think that could totally work. I don't want to ramble on and imagine all the things that Clay could do for the game for Don't Starve Together, because I think the game is pretty good the way it is, but I do think that we could stand to see a major refresh or some sort of major overhaul. The thing is, though, is I don't think that this would really happen, and the reason is because I don't know how programming works necessarily all around, but I don't think it's just as easy as, hey, you know what, press a button and now we're taking this and shoving it over to our other Don't Starve Together 2, like port it right over. I don't think that would really happen. And if they were to do something like that, I think all the players that previously were most likely playing on some sort of, pocket edition, or maybe not playing on the best PC, would now be like, great, now I have to upgrade my PC just to play Don't Starve Together. So you're also gaining but losing a lot of people too. So it's really hard to really satisfy everybody at the same time. So I don't know if this is really what we're about to see or what we're going to see. But I do think that Clay has had a little bit of ups and downs when it comes to Don't Starve Together. I've noticed a lot of less, not necessarily consistency with updates, but I've noticed that maybe the updates are not as beefy as they normally would be. But keep in mind, that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. What that really means is just because you're not seeing this giant meatball of a stew in front of you of Don't Starve Together content does not mean that the game is not actually being updated behind the scenes. And that's exactly what I think is going on. I think they have a certain amount of programmers probably sitting there coding for Don't Starve Together. And I think behind the scenes, they have a bigger project on hand. They've made a lot of awesome games throughout this amount of time from Clay, like Rotwood, and of course, multiple other platforms of different games that have been released. And keep in mind, these types of games have been happening behind the scenes too. So if they can literally make an entire brand new game behind the scenes while still releasing lots of content for Don't Starve Together, that tells me that they must have plans in the work for DST. And it's even known in the roadmap for the end of this year, 2025, that something major will be happening with Don't Starve Together. I mean, there's been multiple hints behind it, so who knows what that really could be. In the end, I think that Clay is doing a great job, and I think that they're releasing content as much as they can. They're constantly working with other developers to bring in new content to Don't Starve Together, and while doing so, they're bringing more eyes on their content on their projects and all their games that they have available too. So they're not just releasing this updates and saying, here's some stuff, enjoy, have a good day. They're going behind the scenes, working with other companies, making sure that they're bringing a lot more eyes on their products along the way too. So it's just basically bringing lots of advertising to the Klei entertainment system. So here we go. I think that in the end, we should or could see some sort of major revamp to Don't Starve Together. Do I think it's an expansion? Maybe. Would an expansion do really well for DST? Probably. Do I think that revamping the entire game and releasing a new, broader, more in-depth game that also brings all the content with it too? Yeah, I think so too, because newer graphics bring newer players, bring people that realize that, hey, this is just an updated version of their previous game, but look how much better it looks. There's a lot of people out there that love the way that Don't Starve Together looks, and there's a lot of people that think it does not really suit their needs. And we all know the way that graphics are moving, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to play something that's amazing graphics, that you need to max out on Ultra. What it means is that people are buying computers nowadays and playing on PCs because they love the way the graphics look. So if you incorporate good graphics into an already amazing game, you're just going to be bringing more people to your game than you did before, while still maintaining the original platformed game that you've previously known as regular Don't Starve Together. So what they could do is essentially bring out Don't Starve Together HD or Don't Starve Together 2.0 with a question mark on it, or whatever they want to do, including keeping the original game intact, so players can still play like they always would on the other servers, but while still maintaining the new playstyle on the new game. Now, I don't know, like I said, the whole technical side of it, ask me to give you a bunch of hardware and make it work, sure, but ask me to program and figure out how that really looks, I have no idea. So I could just be spitting a bunch of random stuff, but I do think that this could be potentially what we're about to see. Just looking through all these trailers that we've been watching this entire time, the artwork does look amazing and I love how it is, but there's just so much more to it that if you added a little bit better graphics to it, could really meet the eyes of everybody else. And of course, add in modes like first person, like I said, which I know you're thinking first person and Don't Starve Together? That's crazy. But let's be honest. If you potentially did this, it would add an aspect of the game style that is completely different than what you're used to. There was this mod called Pickles Mod where you could play first-person DST. It looks janky and weird because the game is kind of pixelated and whatever when you're in first person. But let's just imagine for a moment that gets taken away and you would actually get brought down to a kind of a, third person-ish, first person more so. Imagine it's kind of like the way Grounded would look. How amazing Don't Starve Together could look at that style. It would blow people's minds. It would completely change the way you play the game because now you have a ginormous Deerclops that literally looks like it's the size of the screen that you're so used to, but now that it's in first person mode or third person or whatever you want to look at it like instead of over top view, it would completely change the way you would play and completely make you learn the game and respect all the mobs and everything that you encounter on a whole new level. Let's just imagine for a second that happened. And why would it happen? Because if they did it, you would no longer be able to kind of just look at your map and say, hey, here I am. I just need to walk over a few feet. You're now looking at a whole different ball game. Things would look different, bigger. Things would almost seem like it's just not at all what you've been learning this entire time. It would completely change DST and at like basically the roots of you learning to play the game all over again. Of course, this is all hypothetical. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm essentially just talking about what I think could be happening to the game. The game is going really well right now. I'm sure Klei has commented quite a few times that they've probably peaked with a lot of players, especially during Christmas time, and especially sales are continuing to rise. Questioning if Don't Starve Together or Klei is making it so you have to buy their skins in order to keep the game going or whatever. You know what? They make lots of sales. They sell. If you want to support the game by buying their skins, that's by all means do so. But don't try to sit there and say that they're pushing all the skin sales on people because that makes no sense whatsoever. You have the choice to buy skins. You have the choice to buy the game. You have the choice to literally get the skins for free. In games like Counter-Strike or any other games that you play, when and how often do you find that you're getting a skin for free? The amount of times that I played League of Legends, and it's very, very limited to how much free stuff you get in that game and how many people purchase skins in that game. It's crazy for me to even listen to people when they try to explain how Clay is trying to push skin sales on every user that plays this game because that's how they make all their money. When Clay's literally giving you free stuff all the time, free spools, free Clay points, free game copies, free updates, everything that you can ever imagine for free, with the option of just buying a pack of skins here periodically, which is completely optional nowadays. It just really makes me kind of like not really enjoy hearing those words. So the next time you hear somebody claiming that Clay is trying to push skin sales on you is completely bogus. I don't like hearing it. It doesn't need to be brought into any conversations. If you want to support the game, support the game. If you want to talk about how the game is about to be, basically, revamped or whatever you want to say, it's completely welcomed. But at this point, all we can do is wait. We just got to wait and hope that Clay is in there making some amazing stew for us to eat at the very end of all of this. Because so far, they've done a bang up job. I really love the way that Clay kind of puts out things and just kind of like acts like it was just already in the works this entire time and we're supposed to just adapt to it when it gets released, because it's just such a shocker to see a game like this get updated so often. Really look back on how often Clay does update Don't Starve Together, compare it to other games, and see how often content gets released for other games. It's definitely comparable to something that is a lot more of a bigger title than Don't Starve Together, in my opinion. They do a lot of stuff. They have dedicated workers doing things probably around the clock, if I had to guess. Of course, like I said, there's lots that they could add that would really bring me back into the game and probably a lot of other players. And I'm not trying to sit here and say, I love DSD so much. They do, like Clay does such an amazing job. All I'm saying is it's been a great game throughout the years, and I can't wait to see what they do when in the future. At this moment, I'm still not playing Don't Starve Together as much as I would like to. I'm really waiting for that big Lebowski of an update to get released, and then I can go and say, hey, you know what? Here it is, the update I've been finally waiting for, and I'll get into the game and start going ham on it again. But for at the moment, I don't know. I honestly don't know what's up with Don't Starve Together and where it's headed or what we're about to see when it comes to the end of Don't Starve Together, if we'll ever see an end or whatever that looks like. But all the hypotheticals are awesome. I love hearing people talk about it and comment about it and question what's going on with the game. And I just love all around the amount of support that the game is still getting. It's definitely not a dead game for any means. It's definitely not losing the amount of people that I believe that everybody thought it was. In fact, I believe it's gaining a lot more people recently because a lot of people are enjoying more indie games than they used to, realizing that games like Don't Starve Together are just like one of those games that you can play over and over again until you finally get the hang of it, only to realize that you don't actually have the hang of the game because you have to go into an alternate universe like the caves or an alternate area. Or even just expand your horizon by playing single player Hamlet or Shipwrecked or whatever you decide to do. There's lots and lots of ways to play Don't Starve Together, and every time somebody does, it's different for each person. So the next time you play Don't Starve Together and you've played it for a very long time, don't discredit the game or think that they're not working their hardest to make it better, because we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. We can of course guess, we can of course hope, and yes, we've probably been waiting for a long time for some major sort of update to get released, but at this point, all we can do is hope. If this comes down to 2026 and I'm still having this conversation, well, at that point, maybe I need to rethink what game that I really focus on. But at the moment, I still really enjoy the game and doing content for it. So until then, well, I'll just have to hold our breath and wait to see what is about to exist around the corner with Don't Starve Together. I hope it's something big. I'm very hopeful that it will be, so I hope that you guys think the same too. You're welcome to post whatever you want in the comments, even if you disagree with me, or even if you do agree with me, or if you have your own idea of what you think is about to be released for Don't Starve Together, or if you're hopeful, because in the end, believe it or not, Clay does read comments behind multiple things, not even just the forums, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff. They don't just sit there and just ignore everybody's ideas about the games. They take them and they do put them in the games, believe it or not. So even if you have a small idea about what needs to be added to Don't Starve Together, post about it. Say whatever you want. It's okay. It's welcomed. Believe it or not, there was a time when I mentioned something to Clay about something and it did get added into the game. So that being a thing is just so cool to see behind Clay developers because they do listen to what you have to offer. So yeah, hope you've been awesome. I hope everyone's enjoying their time. And if you're playing lots of Don't Starve Together right now, I hope that you continue to do so because I'm waiting for the big release and then I'm back at it again. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.